Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Great.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Chen from Rook Quality System, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to talk about the Asia Pacific regulation and development trends of the SaMD. I've worked at the Rook for 2 years. Before joining Rook, I was an R&D engineer and handled medical device development from proof of concept, verification and validation, design transfer, and mass production. And I was also dedicated to some quality assurance affairs. And during the work in Rook, we helped many SMD clients develop their quality management system, regulatory strategy, and prepare technical files for regulatory submission. So for today's talk, I will focus on the regulation of SMD and digital health. The topics will cover the definition of the medical device in the US FDA, EU MDR, and some Asia Pacific countries, and how they classify your device, and the alternative regulation pathway, and the novel development trends in SMD and digital health. So first of all, the questions that our clients often ask us is my software product a medical device? Will my product be regulated? So let's take a look at the definition of the IMDRF. The IMDRF is the International Medical Device Regulators Forum that accelerates global medical device regulatory convergence to promote an efficient and effective regulatory model. And their definition of SND is the software intended to be used for medical purposes without being part of the hardware medical device. And because the US market and the EU market are by far the largest markets for medical device around the world, so let's also take a look to the US FDA and EU MDR here. The US FDA directly adopted the IMDRF definition of SMD, and other than the SMD, FDA also defines different types of software relevant to the medical device. One is the software in a medical device, which is a combination device that includes hardware, and another one is the non-product software, which is used to manufacture and maintain a medical device. The manufacturer mentioned here is not only the manufacturer of hardware, but also the manufacturer of software, such as the deployment and testing of finished medical device. And nowadays, there are more and more software tools for software developers to build and maintain their software during the entire software development lifecycle. So the FDA suggests the manufacturer evaluate the risk of those tools to see the impact on the device or quality system when the tool has a failure, and then validate the tools that with the unacceptable risk. And for EU MDR, there's only one definition of medical device software, which can be a standalone software medical device or combined with hardware for a purpose specified in the MDR or IVDR's medical device definition. And FDA recognized that the term clinical decision support or CDS is used broadly and in different ways depending on the context. But not all clinical decision support software used in healthcare setting meets the definition of the medical device. So in 2016, the US 21st Century Cures Act amended the FD&C Act to exclude certain medical device functions from the definition of the medical device. The excluded devices include specific clinical decision support software, which meets all four criteria. The first device is intended to acquire, process, or analyze the medical image or a signal. device is not intended to acquire, process, and analyze medical image or signal. And the second, the device is intended for displaying, analyzing, or printing medical information. And the third, the device is intended for supporting or providing recommendation to a healthcare professional. The fourth, the device is intended to enable the healthcare professional to independently review the basis for the software's recommendations. And recently, Rooks have prepared pre-submissions to the FDA to discuss the CDS device for two of our clients. One is about the automatic planning system of therapy in radiation oncology, and another device is intended to predict the intraoperative hypertension risk before the surgery. So just feel free to reach out to us anytime if you are unsure of CDS interpretation. And let's talk about the countries in Asia Pacific. The regulation agency of Australia is Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, and the TGA defines the software product as a medical device if they are intended to perform functions including providing a diagnosis, analyzing patient data to screen for a disease, specifying a treatment, providing information for monitoring a disease or patient parameters, controlling a hardware device, or providing therapy. And for software-based medical device, TGA also excludes or exempts certain devices from the scope of the TGA regulation based on aligning with international regulatory frameworks and reducing or removing unnecessary regulatory burdens. The exemption means the software is a medical device, but is only subject to part regulatory requirements. And TGA also introduced exemptions for some clinical decision support software. And if the device is excluded, it's not a medical device and is not subject to any TGA regulatory requirement, which means it is limited to perform some functions under the condition that is not serious. And TGA also has a definition of serious, like for a condition, ailment, or defect. The serious means that is not appropriate to be diagnosed or treated without consulting a medical practitioner, dentist, or other kinds of healthcare worker, or that is beyond the average person's ability to accurately evaluate or treat safely without supervisions by a medical practitioner or the healthcare worker. The HSA is a Singapore regulatory agency, defines the software medical devices intended for medical purposes, including investigating, detecting, diagnosing, monitoring, treating, or managing any medical condition, disease, anatomic or physiological process. And it also defines different forms of software medical device, including the hardware combination device, such as image software in diagnostic imaging system, and standalone software, for example, the image processing software that run on the general purpose computer for reviewing and diagnosis of the medical images, and standalone mobile application, such as a mobile app running on a mobile device that is intended to remotely monitor a patient's vital signs. And lastly, the web-based software is a software application that can be accessed through a web browser. And the HSA also identifies that the telehealth products are instruments, machines, or software involved in providing healthcare services over a physically separate environment via information communication technologies. And it includes 4 categories. Like the telecollaboration is the interaction between on-site and remote healthcare professionals for clinical purpose. And teletreatment is the provision of direct clinical care such as triage, examination, diagnosis, and treatment, such as robotic surgery from a remote location. And telemonitoring refers to biomedical and other forms of data collected directly from patients by remote systems such as vital signs monitoring and home nursing. Lastly, the tele-support is the use of online services for non-clinical purposes to support the patient, caregiver, or user. But as not all telehealth products in the market are medical devices, so HSA issued a guideline that clarifies the types of telehealth products that are regulated as medical devices. And here's the questionnaire that you can ask yourself to determine whether the telehealth product is a medical device or not. The first question is, can the device be used for medical purposes? If the answer is no, then it's not a medical device. If yes, then the second question is whether the device is labeled with the statement as intended for general well-being purposes or to encourage or maintain a healthy lifestyle and is not intended for any medical purpose. If the answer is yes, then it's not a medical device. And if the answer is no, your product is a medical device and will be regulated. And China's National Medical Products Administration defines the software product as a medical device when they are intended to perform a medical device function. And they also make the following distinctions of software medical device. From the regulated scope perspective, the software functions can be divided into medical device function and non-medical device functions. The medical device function refers to that can be used to measuring, processing, calculating, and analyzing of medical images, physiological parameters, or in vitro diagnosis data. And those functions used in the accounting or the administrative in the hospital are not medical device functions, and which are not subject to be supervised. So NMPA also suggests manufacturers to split these two types of functions as far as possible through modular software design. And if it's technically impossible to separate, the non-medical device functions should be considered as an integral part of the medical device software. And the second distinction is the algorithm. The core algorithm and non-core algorithm is really straightforward, which is the core algorithm refers to the algorithm necessary to realize the core functions of the software device. And from the complexity perspective, the algorithm can be divided into simple and complex. The simple algorithm has a clear principle or based on merger formulas, which is associated with existing knowledge, while the complex algorithm is usually based on novel research with many assumptions and factors and is not easy for interpretation. And next is the clinical decision support. The decision support device assists users such as medical staff and patients in medical decision making by providing suggestions for diagnosis and treatment activity, such as identifying lesion characteristics, determining lesion properties, and medication and treatment guidelines. And the non-clinical decision support device only provides medical reference information without medical decision making, including process optimization, 3D reconstruction, etc. And from the perspective of the maturity of the technology, The software algorithm, function, and intended use can be divided into two types, the mature and novel. The mature means the situation where the safety and effectiveness have been completely proven in clinical. And as long as one software function or algorithm in the medical devices is novel, then the whole software medical device is novel. And another question our clients often ask is, what classification is my medical device? So let's take a look at the US FDA. The US FDA classifies SaMD using the same risk classes as traditional medical devices. And the FDA also requires the manufacturers to determine the level of concern, which estimate the severity of injury that a device could permit or inflict, either directly or indirectly, on the patient or operator as a result of device failure, design flaws, or simply the virtue of employing the device for its intended use. Although the level of concern may be correlated with risk, but it is only used to determine the extent of documentation for the pre-market submission. And for EU MDR, they also uses the same risk classification as traditional medical device, and they have 4 classes: Class 1, Class 2A, 2B, and Class 3. And the EU MDR also has an outline for determining your medical device software risk classes, which is identified in Rule 11 in Annex 8 of EU MDR. And for the software intended to provide information for the decisions with diagnosis or therapeutic purpose, it would classify as 2A. If such a decision has an impact that may cause death or an irreversible deterioration, it would classify as Class 3. And if it may cause serious deterioration of person's state of health or surgical intervention, it would classify as Class 2B. And the device is intended to monitor physiological process is classified as Class 2A. And except if it is intended for monitoring vital physiological parameters, where the nature of variation of those parameters is such that it could result in immediate danger to the patient, in which case it is classified as Class 2B, and all other software is classified as Class 1. And Australia's TGA has made regulatory changes in 2019 related to SaMD classification that will be effective from 2021. The classification rules are primarily in line with the EU MDR, and these consider the harm that could be caused by providing incorrect information in carrying out the medical device functions of the software in different intended use, and also take into account the recipient of software's output, such as experienced user like the healthcare professional and inexperienced user like patients. And HSA classifies the SaMD according to the same classification rules as traditional medical device. This approach is described further in HSA's regulatory guideline for telehealth products, and which provides examples and flowchart for making a SaMD classification decision. So Class A device refers to the software or app that solely display real-time patient physiological parameters derived from another device and does not measure, analyze, or monitor patient parameters. And examples of Class B software device include those used for measuring heart rate and ECG, and software for predicting low blood glucose level episodes in patients based on past glucose measurements and diet. And Class C device refers to the apps for measuring blood glucose in whole blood and recommended medication dosage or used for continuous measurements and monitoring of ECG and irregular heart rate management in cardiac patients. And here the Class D device, such as an implantable defibrillation letter or heart valve, so it's not applicable for the SaMD. And this flowchart is based on the current risk classification rules as per GN 13. And for the manufacturer to determine the risk classification of telehealth medical devices, the first question is to see if the device is intended for continuous monitoring of physiological parameters, providing therapy, recommendations, modifying ongoing therapies, or diagnosing, monitoring, managing, or treating critical ill patients. If the answer is yes, then the device is Class C. If not, let's move to the second question. The second question is the device intended to measure physiological parameter in the diagnosis or administer or exchange energy in a non-hazardous way? If the answer is yes, the device is Class B. And if no, the device is classified as a Class A device. In China, NMPA classifies the SaMD products in the same manner as a traditional medical device according to the rules for classification of medical devices. These rules describes the risk-based approach in which medical devices are categorized at increasing level of risk as Class 1, 2, and 3. And the rules indicates that the classification is determined by its intended purpose, structural characteristics, pattern of use, status of use, and whether it contacts the body. And according to the nature of the software, such as the rapidly iterative version, the complex structure of the system, and plentiful software development tools, there are significant differences between SaMD and traditional devices, and the conventional regulation might not be 100% suitable for the SaMD. Therefore, some regulatory agencies have developed alternative SaMD regulatory approaches in a variety of forms, such as recognition and reliance model, which is the acceptance of the regulatory decision of another regulator or trusted institutions, or give significant weight to assessments performed by another regulatory authority or trusted institution. And the expedited review pathway provides a faster pre-market decision than the traditional regulatory pathway. And the pre-certification program aims to streamline the pre-market review process with increased post-market commitment. And lastly, the predetermined change control plan means incorporating the predetermined change control plans during the pre-market review to support the rapid implementation of software modification post-deployment. So the TGA supports the international collaboration and has several bilateral mutual recognition agreements about conformity assessment, including the Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and Singapore. And the HSA also supports the confidence-based regulation through the recognition and reliance model, which leverage the approvals of HSA's reference regulatory agencies, including Australia, Canada, the US FDA, EU notified body, and Japan. And in China, the NMPA launched a special review procedure for innovative medical devices, prioritizing and expediting the review and giving a communication advantage at the various stages. The definition of the innovative medical device should meet the following criteria. The device manufacturer should own the patent of the core technology and complete the preliminary research and has a basic prototype. And the core principle of the or mechanism of the device should be the first case in China. And the performance or safety is fundamentally improved compared with the similar products. And lastly, the device should be a class 2 or class 3 device. And the Asia Pacific Medical Technology Association, the APAC Med Digital Health Committee, issue a report and analyzes the practice in Asia Pacific regulatory agencies in 2021. And this table compares the best practices and gaps across selected Asia Pacific countries. The checkmark means the current regulatory framework encompasses the recommended best practices, and the crossmark means the best practices are not currently adapted. And the triangle means some guidelines are available, but further improvement are recommended. So first, the TGA has a good practices for the device qualification, and other countries have some guidance but require the improvements. And this report assesses the risk classification practice of each regulatory agency by whether they adopt the IMDRF's guidance or not. And currently, the IMDRF categorizations is not widely used in Asia Pacific, probably because it seems to add an additional factor to classification. However, the IMDRF categorization can be helpful in helping to determine your risk class in the EU MDR, and this is what most companies use it for. And one of the EU MDR guidance, NDCG 2019-11, includes a table that combines both IMDRF categorization and EU risk classes. And the multiple functions software contains some functions that are subjected to be regulated, while others are not. And regulatory agencies should exercise oversight only over those functions with an intended purpose that fulfill the medical device definition. And only China has a practice of distinct device and non-device software functions, but it is not clearly elaborate on the definition and impact assessment of non-device functions on the device, non-device functions on the device function. And the US FDA has issued a guidance that clarifies when and how the FDA intends to assess the impact of non-device function on the safety and effectiveness of the device function, and identify the principles and pre-market review practices. And all selected Asia Pacific countries that have alternative pathway for digital health or SaMD, some are good and some might require improvement. And all listed countries have pre-submission consultation mechanism. And most listed regulatory agencies already adopt the best practice of the AI/ML framework. And artificial intelligence and machine learning are emerging topics and have various challenges in the regulatory fields. However, this will be a trend of the software medical device, because more and more medical devices will adopt AI/ML techniques. So the agency's regulatory strategy will significantly affect the development of the AI/ML-based medical device. And SaMD is developed and validated really differently than traditional hardware-based devices, in that the SaMD is designed iteratively and can be updated after deployment to quickly make enhancements and efficiently address issues such as malfunctions and adverse security events. In 2017, the FDA recognized that the current device regulatory framework had not been optimized to regulate this device. So the FDA launched the software pre-certification pilot program to explore the possibility of innovative approaches to regulatory oversight of medical device software. And the pre-certification total product lifecycle enables the evaluation and monitoring of the software product from its pre-market development to post-market performance. And the excellence appraisal evaluates an organization's capability for developing, testing, and managing high-quality software throughout a product lifecycle and provides confidence in the products made and marketed by the organization. And when fully developed, this program would provide the parameters to allow the organizations to assess if their products may be eligible for streamlined review, or if their pre-certification status and review pathway determination may replace the need for a traditional pre-market submission. And review pathway determination depends not only on the risk of the medical device software product, but also on the result of the excellence appraisal for an organization. The information evaluated during the excellence appraisal and review determination components can be leveraged to support a marketing authorization for a software product. And the real-world performance monitoring enables verification of the SaMD's continued safety, effectiveness, and performance, and verification of the organization's ongoing commitment to the excellence principles. So from my point of view, this program will mitigate the gap between the software medical device manufacturer and the regulatory agencies, and will come up with a new approach to regulate innovative medical device with novel technology. So what are the novel technology that the medical device field has started adapting and growing drastically? Here I listed some trends in the SaMD development. Some trends might not be really new in the software fields, but it's emerging in the digital fields. First is AI/ML. Currently, the main goal of the adopting AI/ML techniques is to replace routine work to lower costs, improve efficiency, and enhance the existing medical device. For example, AI software can improve patient symptoms analysis, detect medication errors, and automate administrative tasks. So without those mundane tasks, the skilled workers can focus on other things with higher potential values. And next is the microservice. The conventional architecture involves all the application processes being coupled and run as a single service. And the microservice architecture builds the models as independent services, and each model supports a specific task and uses the application programming interface to communicate with other sets of services. So the developer can build, manage, and change each module without altering other modules, which requires less development time and can be scaled easily, and also can be reused in other projects. And recently, healthcare organizations have been increasingly embracing low-code and no-code development as a cost and time-cutting advantage. The low-code and no-code simplified and accelerate app building by providing developers with a visual interface that enables Lego-like assembly of drag-and-drop code application components. The strategy empowers teams to easily insert requisite APIs, AI/ML capabilities, data connections, IoT sensors, model-driven logic, and other advanced features that don't require advanced coding skills. So in other words, low-code and no-code put pre-built innovation at the fingertip of the developers. And during the pandemic, most businesses have expanded remote working capabilities and experienced a dramatic shift in IT needs. And coupled with a growing number of wearables and sensors designed to allow patients to monitor their own health at home, cloud computing is the perfect tool to help companies that need to transform and adapt to the growing demands of this new normal. However, the more data transformation on the network, the more cybersecurity issues must be considered. So, Dev Security Ops integrates security throughout the entire software development lifecycle, which is crucial to implementing security without slowing down the development. Instead of security being a concern at the tail end of the development, developers can fix security issues in the code in real time. The result is that the software is deployed as quickly as possible while being as secure. So for today's presentation, we cover the SaMD qualification and classification from different regulation agencies' perspective, and alternative SaMD regulatory pathway in US FDA, EU NDR, and some Asia Pacific countries. And we also talk about the SaMD development trends. So please, thank you so much for your interest and attention today. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
For Alan?
Yeah.
Question? If not, yeah, we like thanks to Adam for his time and for to do his session live here. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you.
Sorry. What's your